poor hungry boy was crying on a bench. An elderly millionaire went to help and was shocked when the bitter winter wind howled through the desolate New York City alley, carrying with it the faint echoes of a child's sobs. William Bill Carter, an elderly millionaire known for his charitable work, pulled his wool coat tighter around his shoulders as he ventured deeper into the shadows. He had spent countless nights like this, distributing food and necessities to the homeless, seeking some form of redemption for the sins he believed he had committed. As he rounded a corner, the dim yellow streetlight illuminated a small figure huddled against a brick wall. A boy, no more than 10 years old, sat curled up on a bench, his frail body shaking with each muffled cry. Bill approached cautiously, his heart heavy with the weight of memories long buried. "Hey there, son," Bill called softly, kneeling beside the bench. "Are you hungry? I've got some hot soup here and a little money, and you can get something to eat later." The boy didn't respond immediately, seemingly hesitant to trust this strange voice in the night. Bill waited patiently, extending his hand with the steaming cup of soup. "I won't hurt you," he reassured gently. "I just want to help." Slowly, the boy lifted his head, and in that moment, Bill's world stopped spinning. The face that looked up at him was pale and dirty, but unmistakable. Those large, frightened blue eyes were the same ones he had seen countless times in old photographs, in memories he had kept precious despite the pain they brought. The small mouth and delicate features were exactly as he remembered them. Lucas. The name escaped Bill's lips like a whisper, almost unable to believe what his eyes were seeing. The boy frowned, confused, as if trying to recognize the man in front of him. Bill felt his heart race, a mixture of hope and fear welling up in his chest. It was impossible, he knew. Lucas, his grandson, had died 5 years ago in the accident that also took the lives of his son Michael and daughter-in-law Megan. The authorities had said there was no doubt the bodies were found in the car that went off the cliff. But there, before him, was that face. The face he had cried for years. The face he never expected to see again. The face he had buried along with what remained of his heart. You're Lucas, aren't you?" Bill asked, his voice trembling as he held the boy's thin shoulders, desperately searching for some answer in those frightened eyes. The boy looked away, as if the question was too painful to answer. I don't know. I don't remember." His voice was barely audible, a weak whisper, as if each word was forced out. Bill felt a mix of despair and relief. If this was really Lucas, why didn't he remember? What could have happened during all these years that left his grandson so distant, so lost? But at the same time, he couldn't deny the joy he felt in his chest, a flicker of hope he thought he had lost long ago. It's okay, my boy," Bill tried to reassure him, his voice now softer. "You're safe now. I'll take care of you. Let's get out of here, go somewhere where you can rest, eat something warm. I promise everything will be okay." The boy, still wary, hesitated for a moment, but survival instinct spoke louder. He nodded slightly, allowing Bill to help him up. As the old man placed a protective arm around the boy's shoulders, he realized just how thin and fragile Lucas was. It was as if he were made of glass, ready to shatter at the slightest touch. "Let's go, Lucas. You'll be okay," Bill repeated, more to himself than to the boy, as he guided him down the street. "You don't have to be afraid anymore." As they walked together through the deserted streets toward Bill's mansion, the elderly millionaire couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong with all of this. How could Lucas be alive after all this time? How had he survived, and why was he on the streets alone, abandoned like a lost dog? The questions hammered in his mind, but he knew now was not the time to seek answers. The priority was to care for the boy, feed him, give him a safe place to sleep. "Do you remember anything, Lucas?" Bill asked gently as they continued walking. "Anything about what happened? Anything at all, no matter how small?" Lucas shook his head negatively, keeping his eyes fixed on the ground. "I don't know. I just remember being cold and hungry. I think someone left me, but I don't remember who." "It's okay, son. "You don't have to force yourself to remember now," Bill said, trying to hide the tremor in his voice. He didn't know what the future held, but one thing he was sure of: he would do whatever it took to protect Lucas. As they approached the grand gates of the Carter mansion, Bill felt a surge of determination. He may not have all the answers yet, but he knew in his heart that this was just the beginning of an extraordinary journey. A journey that would uncover long-buried secrets, test the bonds of family, and ultimately lead to redemption. Little did Bill know that his decision to help this mysterious boy would set in motion a chain of events that would not only change his life forever, but also touch the hearts of countless others. As they stepped into the warmth of the mansion, leaving the cold, unforgiving night behind, a new chapter in their lives began to unfold, one filled with hope, love, and the unbreakable spirit of family. And for those witnessing this incredible story, remember that sometimes the most extraordinary tales of human resilience and compassion are unfolding right before our eyes. If you've been moved by this glimpse into Bill and Lucas's journey, consider subscribing to our channel. Together we'll explore more stories that remind us of the power of love, the strength of the human spirit, and the unexpected miracles that can happen when we open our hearts to those in need. The Carter mansion stood as a testament to wealth and success, its grand facade a stark contrast to the humble beginnings of its owner. William Bill Carter had built his fortune from the ground up, transforming a small investment into a sprawling business empire. Now, at 68, he was one of New York's most prominent millionaires, known as much for his business acumen as for his philanthropic endeavors. But behind the mansion's ornate doors lay a different story. The opulent rooms, once filled with laughter and life, now echoed with an emptiness that no amount of wealth could fill. For the past 5 years, Bill had lived alone, haunted by the ghosts of a family tragedy that had torn his world apart. It all began on a rainy night in autumn 5 years ago. Bill's son, Michael Carter, along with his wife Megan and their young son Lucas, were driving back from a family vacation. Michael, a rising star in his father's company, had recently uncovered some discrepancies in the company's overseas operations. He was eager to discuss his findings with Bill, unaware of the danger that lurked in the shadows. As their car wound its way through the mountains, fate struck a cruel blow. Reports would later claim it was a tragic accident, a slick road, a sharp turn, and a moment's distraction. The car plummeted off a cliff, bursting into flames upon impact. When the authorities finally reached the wreckage, they found no survivors. The news shattered Bill's world. In one horrific moment, he had lost his son, daughter-in-law, and beloved grandson. The pain was unbearable, the guilt overwhelming. Bill couldn't help but wonder if Michael's discovery had something to do with the accident. At his own company, the empire he had built somehow played a role in the death of his family. In the years that followed, Bill threw himself into his work and charitable activities, desperately seeking some form of atonement. He donated millions to orphanages and programs for underprivileged children, perhaps subconsciously hoping to fill the void left by Lucas's death. But nothing could ease the ache in his heart or quiet the questions that plagued his mind. Now, as Bill led the young boy he believed to be Lucas into the mansion, those memories came flooding back with renewed intensity. The child looked around with wide eyes, taking in the grandeur of his surroundings. There was a flicker of recognition in his gaze, as if he were trying to recall a distant dream. "This, I think I've been here before," the boy murmured, his voice barely above a whisper. Bill's heart clenched at those words. "Yes, you have, Lucas," he said gently. "This was your home, and now it is again." As they made their way to the kitchen, Bill couldn't help but study the boy's face, searching for any sign that might confirm his identity. The resemblance was uncanny, the same blue eyes, the same curve of the chin, but there was something different too. A haunted look that no child should have, speaking of hardships and struggles beyond his years. "You must be starving," Bill said, pulling out a chair for the boy. "Sit down, I'll bring you something to eat." As Lucas ate slowly, Bill watched him in silence. With each bite the boy took, the certainty grew in Bill's chest that this was indeed his grandson. But the questions kept coming. Where were Michael and Megan? How had Lucas survived? And most importantly, why was he here alone? Lucas, Bill began, carefully choosing his words. I know you're confused right now, but I promise I'll figure out what happened, and I'll do everything in my power to help you. The boy stopped eating for a moment and looked at Bill, his blue eyes filled with deep sadness. You're not going to leave me, are you? The question caught Bill by surprise, and he felt a lump form in his throat. Never, Lucas. I'll never leave you. I'm here to take care of you, to protect you. No matter what happens, you'll always have a safe place here with me. Lucas looked at his plate, his expression still uncertain. He seemed to want to believe Bill's words, but something prevented him from fully trusting the promise of safety. Life on the streets had taught him not to trust so easily, not to cling to words that could, at any moment, vanish into thin air. Thank you, Lucas murmured quietly, almost as if testing Bill's sincerity. Bill smiled, feeling a wave of emotion sweep over him. There was so much he wanted to say, so much he wanted to ask, but he knew he needed to take it slow. Lucas was scared and vulnerable, and pushing him to remember or talk about what had happened might be too much for him right now. You don't need to thank me, Lucas, Bill said softly. Just rest, eat well, and when you're ready we'll talk more, okay? As the night deepened, Bill showed Lucas to one of the guest rooms. The boy looked around in awe at the large, comfortable bed and the plush furnishings, a far cry from wherever he had been sleeping for the past years. So this is your room now, Lucas, Bill said, his voice thick with emotion. You're safe here. If you need anything at all, I'll be just down the hall. After making sure Lucas was settled, Bill retreated to his study. His mind was racing, trying to make sense of everything that had happened. He knew he couldn't handle this alone. He needed help, someone who could dig deeper and uncover the truth about what had really happened 5 years ago. With trembling hands, Bill picked up the phone and dialed a number he had hoped never to use again. After a few rings, a gruff voice answered. Twins Investigations. This is Jim speaking. Jim, it's William Carter, Bill said, his voice filled with urgency. I need your help. It's about my grandson, Lucas. I think he's alive. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Mr. Carter, Jim replied, his tone serious. I thought we closed that case years ago. What's happened? I found him, Jim. On the streets. He doesn't remember much, but I'm sure it's him. I need you to reopen the investigation. Find out what really happened that night, and why my grandson has been living on the streets all these years. All right, Mr. Carter, Jim said after a moment's consideration. I'll start digging again, but I need to warn you, if your grandson is really alive, it means someone went to great lengths to make it look like he died in that accident. This could be dangerous. I understand, Bill replied, his resolve strengthening, but I need to know the truth, no matter how dangerous it might be. My family deserves justice. As he hung up the phone, Bill felt a mix of fear and determination. He knew he was stepping into something bigger and potentially more dangerous than he could imagine. But as he thought of Lucas, sleeping peacefully down the hall for what was probably the first time in years, he knew he had no choice. Whatever secrets lay buried in the past, whatever forces had torn his family apart, Bill was determined to uncover the truth. For Lucas, for Michael and Megan, and for himself, he would face whatever challenges lay ahead. The journey to the truth had begun, and there was no turning back now. The following days at the Carter mansion were filled with a mixture of hope and trepidation. Bill found himself walking on eggshells, afraid that any wrong move might scare Lucas away or trigger painful memories. The boy, for his part, seemed to be slowly adjusting to his new surroundings, though he remained quiet and withdrawn. One morning, as Bill was preparing breakfast, he heard soft footsteps behind him. Turning, he saw Lucas standing in the doorway, his eyes fixed on a framed photograph on the wall. It was a picture of Michael, Megan, and Lucas, taken just weeks before the accident. Is that me? Lucas asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Bill nodded, moving closer to the boy. "Yes, Lucas." "That's your parents, Michael and Megan." Lucas stared at the photo, his brow furrowed in concentration. "I think I remember something. A picnic. There was a lake and Dad was teaching me to skip stones." Bill's heart leaped at these words. It was the first time Lucas had shown any sign of remembering his past. "That's right," he said gently. "That photo was taken at Lake George. Your dad loved taking you there." As Lucas continued to gaze at the picture, Bill's phone rang. It was Jim Owens, the private investigator he had hired to look into the case. "Mr. Carter," Jim's gruff voice came through the line. "I've got some preliminary findings. Can we meet?" Bill agreed, arranging to meet Jim at a discreet cafe later that day. After ensuring Lucas was comfortable and in the care of his trusted housekeeper, Bill left for the meeting, his mind racing with possibilities. The cafe was nearly empty when Bill arrived. Jim was already there, a thick folder on the table in front of him. The detective's face was grim as Bill sat down. "What have you found, Jim?" Bill asked, unable to hide the anxiety in his voice. Jim opened the folder, pulling out several documents. "I've been reviewing the accident report, Mr. Carter, and something doesn't add up. The official story is that the car lost control on a sharp curve and went off the road. But I've found evidence that suggests it might not have been an accident at all." Bill felt his blood run cold. "What do you mean?" "There were tire marks at the scene that weren't mentioned in the initial report," Jim explained. "Marks that suggest Michael's car might have been forced off the road. Someone may have deliberately caused the accident." The implications of Jim's words hit Bill like a physical blow. "Are you saying someone wanted to harm them? That it was murder?" Jim's expression was grave. "I can't say for certain yet, but it's a possibility we can't ignore. There's more, Mr. Carter. I've re-examined the medical records, and there's something odd about them too. Michael suffered a severe head injury during the crash, which would have caused his death almost instantly. But Megan, her injuries weren't consistent with the impact. In fact, the report suggests she may have died from an overdose of medication before the crash." Bill struggled to process this information. "An overdose? Are you saying Megan?" "I'm not saying she did it voluntarily," Jim interrupted, understanding where Bill's thoughts were headed. "But it's possible someone administered the drugs to her before the accident. That would explain why she didn't try to react or escape the car." As Bill sat there, stunned by these revelations, Jim continued. "But the most intriguing thing is that Lucas's body was never found among the wreckage." Bill frowned. "What do you mean, never found? They said they found remains." "They assume they did, due to the destruction of the vehicle," Jim explained. "And you were too emotionally vulnerable at the time to question it. But now, with Lucas alive, we have to consider the possibility that he was taken out of the car before the accident." Bill felt as if the ground was collapsing beneath him. This is too much to process, Jim. If someone took Lucas from the car, who did it? And why? "Those are the questions we need to answer," Jim said, closing the folder. "And there's one more thing, Mr. Carter. During my investigation, I received an anonymous tip. Someone who seemed to know more than they should about the accident and about Lucas's whereabouts over the past years." Bill leaned forward, his interest piqued. "What did this person say?" "Just enough to make me suspicious," Jim replied, crossing his arms. "They mentioned a name, Megan. Said that Megan was alive at the time of the accident and that she knew more than anyone else about what really happened. Unfortunately, the call was cut off before I could get more details." Bill's mind was reeling. If Megan was alive, where did she go? And why would she leave Lucas? None of this made sense. "I need to tell Lucas," Bill said finally. "He needs to know that we're close to finding the truth. But at the same time, how do I tell him that his mother might be alive but abandoned him?" Jim looked at Bill with compassion. "I understand your concern. Maybe it's best to go slow, reveal the information gradually as you yourself begin to understand better what happened. Bill nodded, his mind still racing. You're right, I'll think about how to do that. But for now, keep up the investigation, Jim. Find out everything you can. As Bill left the cafe, he felt a strange mixture of hope and dread. They were closer to the truth than ever before, but that truth seemed darker and more complex than he could have imagined. Whatever had happened 5 years ago, it was clear that it was part of something much bigger and more sinister than a simple car accident. Returning to the mansion, Bill found Lucas in the library, poring over old photo albums. The boy looked up as Bill entered, his eyes questioning. "Is everything okay, Grandpa?" Lucas asked, using the term of endearment for the first time. "I saw you leave earlier. You looked worried." Bill's heart swelled at being called Grandpa, but he knew he had to tread carefully. "Everything's fine, Lucas," he said, sitting down next to the boy. "I was just meeting with someone who's helping us understand what happened to you and your parents." Lucas's eyes widened. "Did you find out anything?" Bill hesitated, weighing his words carefully. "We found some things, Lucas. Things that might be hard to hear. But I promise I'll tell you everything, step by step. Are you ready for that?" Lucas nodded, his young face set with determination. "I'm ready, Grandpa. You can tell me." As Bill began to explain what Jim had discovered, he watched Lucas's face carefully, ready to stop if it became too much for the boy. But Lucas listened intently, his expression a mixture of confusion, pain, and hope. "So, my mom might be alive?" Lucas asked, his voice trembling. Bill nodded. "It's possible, Lucas. We're not sure yet, but there are indications that she might be, and that she knew more about what really happened that night." Lucas was silent for a moment, processing this information. When he spoke again, his voice was barely a whisper. "But if she's alive, why didn't she come for me? Why did she leave me?" Bill felt a stab of pain seeing the suffering in Lucas's eyes. He knew that any answer he could give would be insufficient to ease the boy's anguish. "I don't know her reasons, Lucas," he said softly, trying to be as gentle as possible. "It could be that she was scared, that she thought coming back would put you in more danger. Maybe she believed that staying away was the only way to keep you safe. But I promise we're going to find her, Luke. We're going to figure out everything that happened and why she did what she did." As Lucas struggled to contain the emotions threatening to overflow, Bill pulled him into a tight hug. He knew that the questions Lucas had weren't easy to answer, and that each answer they found could bring even more pain. But he also knew that Lucas needed the truth, no matter how difficult it might be. "I know it's hard, Lucas," Bill whispered, holding him firmly, "but we're going to find out, and whatever we discover, we'll face it together." As they sat there, grandfather and grandson united in their quest for truth, Bill knew that this was just the beginning. The road ahead would be fraught with danger and heartache, but he was determined to see it through. For Lucas, for Michael and Megan, and for the chance to finally put the ghosts of the past to rest, he would face whatever challenges lay ahead. The hunt for the truth had begun in earnest, and there was no turning back now. The revelation about Megan's possible survival sent shockwaves through the Carter household. For days, Bill grappled with the implications, torn between hope and disbelief. Lucas, meanwhile, seemed to retreat into himself, spending hours staring at old family photos, as if trying to piece together a puzzle with missing parts. It was on a crisp autumn morning, much like the one when the accident occurred, that the first major breakthrough came. Jim Owens arrived at the mansion, his face a mixture of excitement and apprehension. "Mr. Carter," he said as soon as a girl opened the door, "I found her. Megan. She's alive." Bill felt his heart skip a beat. "Where? How?" Jim pulled out a folder from his briefcase. "She's been living under an assumed name in a small town upstate. I've got an address." As Jim explained the details, Lucas appeared at the top of the stairs, his eyes wide with a mixture of hope and fear. "You found my mom?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Bill and Jim exchanged glances, realizing the magnitude of the moment. "Yes, Lucas," Bill said gently. "We think we have. Do you want to come with us to see her?" Lucas nodded slowly, his face a storm of emotions. I think I need to." The drive to the small town was tense with anticipation. As they wound through the countryside, Lucas stared out the window, lost in thought. Occasionally he would close his eyes tightly, as if struck by a sudden memory. "I remember something," he said suddenly, breaking the silence. "A lullaby. Mom used to sing it to me when I couldn't sleep." Bill felt a lump in his throat. It was another piece of the puzzle, another confirmation that they were on the right track. When they finally arrived at the address Jim had found, they saw a small, nondescript house on the outskirts of town. It looked peaceful, almost idyllic, belying the turmoil that was about to unfold. Bill took a deep breath and knocked on the door. For a moment there was silence. Then they heard footsteps approaching. The door opened slowly, revealing a woman who, despite the years and changes, was unmistakably Megan Carter. She froze at the sight of them, her eyes wide with shock and disbelief. "Bill," she gasped. Then her gaze fell on Lucas, and her hand flew to her mouth. "Lucas. Oh my God, Lucas." In an instant, she had crossed the threshold and pulled Lucas into a tight embrace, tears streaming down her face. "My baby, my sweet boy," she sobbed. "I thought I'd lost you forever." Lucas stood rigid for a moment, overwhelmed by the flood of emotions and memories. Then, slowly, he wrapped his arms around his mother, burying his face in her shoulder. Bill watched the reunion with a mixture of joy and trepidation. As touching as the moment was, he knew there were still many questions to be answered. "Megan," he said gently, "we need to talk. There's so much we don't understand." Megan nodded, wiping her tears. "I know," she said softly. "Come in. It's time you knew the truth." Inside, Megan's house was sparsely furnished but neat. Photos of Lucas and Michael adorned the walls, a shrine to the family she thought she had lost. As they settled in the living room, Megan took a deep breath, steeling herself for the conversation ahead. "I never wanted to leave you, Lucas," she began, her voice trembling. "Everything I did to protect you." She went on to explain how in the weeks leading up to the accident, Michael had discovered something alarming about Carter Enterprises' overseas operations. There were discrepancies in the financial reports, hints of money laundering and connections to a dangerous criminal organization. Michael was determined to expose it all, Megan said. But the deeper he dug, the more dangerous it became. "We started receiving threats. At first we thought it was just intimidation tactics, but then—" Her voice trailed off, and she closed her eyes, reliving the horror of that night. "The accident wasn't an accident at all. They tried to kill us, to silence Michael and eliminate any evidence. I managed to get Lucas out of the car, just before it went over the cliff, but I was injured in the process. When I came to, I overheard the men who had run us off the road. They were looking for survivors, particularly Lucas. They knew he was missing from the wreckage." Bill listened in stunned silence, the pieces of the puzzle finally falling into place. "But why didn't you come to me, Megan? I could have protected you both." Megan shook her head sadly. "I couldn't risk it, Bill. These people had connections everywhere. I didn't know who to trust. And I was afraid that if they found out Lucas was alive, they'd come after him again. So I made the hardest decision of my life. I disappeared, taking Lucas with me." "But I don't remember any of this," Lucas interjected, his brow furrowed in confusion. "Why can't I remember you, Mom?" Megan's face crumpled with guilt. "Oh, Lucas, you were so young, and you were traumatized by what happened. The doctors said you might experience memory loss. And then we were separated." She explained how, while on the run, they had been in a car accident. Lucas had hit his head, exacerbating his memory issues. In the chaos that followed, they had been separated. Megan had searched desperately for Lucas, but with no success. Fearing that their pursuers might have found him, she had been forced to stay hidden, all the while never giving up hope of finding her son. As Megan's story unfolded, Lucas found himself assailed by fragmented memories. Flashes of the accident, the fear, the sound of screeching tires and breaking glass. And through it all, his mother's voice singing that familiar lullaby. "I remember," he whispered, tears streaming down his face. "I remember the accident. And I remember you singing to me, telling me everything would be okay." Megan pulled Lucas close, her own tears falling freely. "I never stopped looking for you, sweetheart. I never gave up hope." Bill sat back, his mind reeling from the revelations. The truth was far more complex and heartbreaking than he could have imagined. But amidst the pain and regret, there was also hope. His family, thought lost forever, was reunited against all odds. "What do we do now?" Lucas asked, looking between his mother and grandfather. Bill's jaw set with determination. "Now we fight back. We expose the truth about what happened, and we make sure those responsible are brought to justice. But most importantly, we stay together. No more running, no more hiding. We face this as a family." Megan nodded, a spark of the strong, determined woman she once was shining through. "You're right, Bill. It's time to stop running. For Lucas's sake, for Michael's memory, we need to finish what he started." As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the room, the Carter family found themselves at a crossroads. The road ahead would be fraught with danger and uncertainty, but they would face it together. The truth had set them on a new path, one that would lead them into the heart of a conspiracy that threatened to destroy everything they held dear. But with each other's support and the unbreakable bonds of family, they were ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The real battle was just beginning, and the Carters were determined to see it through to the end. The days following the reunion with Megan were a whirlwind of emotions and activity. The Carter mansion, once a hollow reminder of loss, now buzzed with renewed purpose. Bill, Megan, and Lucas worked tirelessly alongside Jim Owens to piece together the complex puzzle of the past 5 years. Jim's investigation deepened, uncovering a web of corruption that reached far beyond Carter Enterprises. The detectives spent long hours poring over financial records, following paper trails that led to offshore accounts and shell companies. And each discovery painted a darker picture of the organization they were up against. "It's bigger than we thought," Jim explained one evening, spreading documents across Bill's study desk. "This isn't just about money laundering. We're talking about a multinational criminal enterprise with tentacles in everything from arms dealing to human trafficking." Bill felt a chill run down his spine. And Michael stumbled onto this. Jim nodded grimly. "Your son was onto something big. He must have gotten too close to the truth, and they decided to silence him." As the adults delved deeper into the investigation, Lucas found himself grappling with the flood of memories that had been unleashed. Fragments of his past life began to surface, sometimes in dreams, other times triggered by a familiar smell or sound. Megan worked patiently with her son, helping him navigate the confusing mix of emotions that came with each recovered memory. One afternoon, as Lucas sat in the mansion's library flipping through old photo albums, a particular image caught his eye. It was a picture of him and Michael at a carnival, both grinning widely as they held up a stuffed animal prize. "I remember this," Lucas said softly as Megan entered the room. "Dad, he was trying to win that toy for me. He kept missing, but he wouldn't give up." Megan smiled, sitting beside her son. "That's right, your father was stubborn like that. He never could resist a challenge, especially when it came to making you happy." Lucas traced the outline of Michael's face in the photo. "I miss him," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. Megan pulled him close, her own eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I miss him too, sweetheart. But you know what? He'd be so proud of you. You're brave and strong, just like he was." As Lucas continued to recover his memories, Bill focused on unraveling the mystery surrounding Carter Enterprises. He spent hours in meetings with company executives, carefully probing for information without revealing the full extent of what he knew. It was during one such meeting that Bill noticed something odd. Thomas Reeves, the company's CFO, seemed unusually nervous. His hand shook slightly as he presented the latest financial reports, and he avoided making eye contact with Bill throughout the presentation. Trusting his instincts, Bill decided to dig deeper. He asked Jim to look into Reeves' background and financial records. The results were shocking. "Reeves is dirty," Jim reported, handing Bill a thick file. "He's been siphoning money from the company for years, funneling it through a series of shell corporations. And guess where those corporations lead?" Bill's eyes widened as he scanned the documents. The same organization that tried to kill Michael and his family. Jim nodded. "Reeves is our link. He's been working for them from inside your company, Mr. Carter. And I'd bet my last dollar he knew about the hit on your son." The revelation hit Bill like a physical blow. One of his most trusted employees, someone he had considered a friend, had been involved in the attempted murder of his family. The betrayal stung, but it also steeled Bill's resolve. "We need to confront him," Bill said, his voice hard with determination. "But we have to be smart about it. If we tip our hand too soon, we could lose our only lead to the people behind all this." Together, Bill and Jim devised a plan to trap Reeves. They would call an emergency board meeting, presenting evidence of financial irregularities without revealing the full extent of their knowledge. The hope was to pressure Reeves into making a mistake, revealing his connection to the criminal organization. As the pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place, Megan continued to work on rebuilding her relationship with Lucas. The process was not without its challenges. There were moments of frustration and tears as Lucas struggled to reconcile his fragmented memories with the reality of his mother's choices. "Why didn't you look harder for me?" Lucas demanded one evening, his voice raw with emotion. "If you really loved me, how could you give up?" Megan's heart broke at the pain in her son's eyes. "Oh, Lucas," she said softly, reaching for him. "I never gave up. Not for a single day. I searched everywhere I could, but I had to be careful. The people who were after us, they were watching. If I had drawn too much attention, I could have put you in even more danger." She explained how she had hired private investigators, followed every lead, no matter how small. How she had lived with the constant fear that the next phone call would be the one telling her that her son had been found, but it was too late. "I made a choice," Megan said, her voice trembling. "A terrible, heartbreaking choice. To stay hidden, to keep searching in secret, in the hope that one day I would find you, and we could be together again without putting your life at risk. It was the hardest thing I've ever done, and there hasn't been a single day when I haven't questioned that decision. But I did it because I love you more than anything in this world, Lucas. You are my heart, my reason for living. And now that I have you back, I swear I will never let anything separate us again." Lucas listened in silence, tears streaming down his face. Then slowly he moved into his mother's arms, clinging to her as if afraid she might disappear again. "I love you too, Mom," he whispered. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." As mother and son embraced, healing the wounds of their long separation, Bill watched from the doorway, his heart full. Despite the challenges that lay ahead, moments like these reminded him of what they were fighting for. The day of the board meeting arrived, bringing with it a tension that hung heavy in the air. Bill had prepared meticulously, rehearsing his presentation with Jim to ensure they revealed just enough to rattle Reeves without showing their full hand. As the board members filed into the conference room, Bill studied their faces, wondering if any of them were also involved in the conspiracy. Reeves arrived last, his usual confident demeanor noticeably strained. Bill began the meeting, his voice steady as he outlined the financial discrepancies they had uncovered. With each slide, each damning piece of evidence, he watched Reeves grow paler, sweat beading on his forehead. "As you can see," Bill concluded, "these irregularities point to a serious breach of trust within our organization. I believe it's crucial that we identify the source of these discrepancies and take immediate action." The room erupted in murmurs of shock and concern. Board members turned to each other, their expressions a mix of disbelief and anger. But Bill's eyes remained fixed on Reeves, watching for any sign of a break. He didn't have to wait long. As the discussion heated up, with board members demanding answers and action, Reeves suddenly stood, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. "This is ridiculous," he sputtered, his face flushed. "You have no idea what you're dealing with, Carter. You're going to get us all killed." The room fell silent, all eyes turning to Reeves. Bill leaned forward, his gaze intense. "What exactly do you mean by that, Thomas? Who's going to get us killed?" Reeves' eyes darted around the room, like a cornered animal searching for escape. Then, without warning, he bolted for the door. But Jim was faster. The detective had been waiting outside, anticipating just such a move. As Reeves burst into the hallway, he ran straight into Jim's waiting arms. "Thomas Reeves," Jim said, his voice gruff as he pinned the struggling man against the wall, "you're under arrest for embezzlement, conspiracy, and accessory to attempted murder." As Reeves was led away in handcuffs, the boardroom exploded into chaos. Bill raised his hands, calling for calm. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, his voice cutting through the noise, "I know you all have questions. And I promise everything will be explained, but for now I need to ask for your patience and discretion. What we're dealing with here goes far beyond a simple case of embezzlement. Lives are at stake." In the days that followed, Bill worked closely with Jim and a team of trusted lawyers to build their case. Reeves, facing the prospect of a lengthy prison sentence, began to talk. His testimony opened up new avenues of investigation, leading them closer to the heart of the criminal organization that had nearly destroyed the Carter family. But as they delved deeper, the danger intensified. Strange cars began to appear outside the mansion, watching from a distance. And anonymous threats were delivered, warning Bill to back off or face the consequences. One evening, as Bill sat in his study reviewing the latest information from Jim, he heard a crash from downstairs. Heart pounding, he raced to investigate, finding Lucas standing in the kitchen, a broken glass at his feet. "I'm sorry, Grandpa," Lucas said, his voice shaking. "I was getting some water and I thought I saw someone outside the window." Bill pulled his grandson close, scanning the darkened garden beyond the window. For a moment, he thought he saw a shadow move, but then it was gone. "It's all right, Lucas," he said, trying to keep his voice calm. "But I think it's time we talked about increasing our security. Things might get a bit more difficult for a while, but I promise you we're going to get through this." As he held his trembling grandson, Bill felt a fierce surge of protectiveness. They had come too far, overcome too much, to be cowed by threats now. Whatever the cost, he would see this through to the end, for Lucas, for Megan, for Michael's memory, and for the truth that had been buried for far too long. The battle was far from over, but with each passing day, the Carter family grew stronger, more united in their purpose. They had faced separation, loss, and betrayal, but they had emerged from the crucible of their trials, forged into something unbreakable. As the investigation continued to unfold, bringing them closer to the final confrontation with the forces that had torn their lives apart, Bill, Megan, and Lucas stood firm in their resolve. Together they would face whatever challenges lay ahead, bound by the unshakable bonds of family and the unwavering pursuit of justice. The road ahead was fraught with danger, but for the first time in years, hope burned bright in the Carter household. They had found each other against all odds, and now, united, they were ready to reclaim the lives that had been stolen from them. The truth would be revealed, justice would be served, and the Carter family would emerge from the shadows, stronger and more determined than ever before. The investigation into the criminal organization reached a fever pitch as Bill, Megan, and Jim Owens closed in on the truth. Armed with Reeves' testimony and a mountain of evidence, they were ready to confront the shadowy figures behind the conspiracy that had torn the Carter family apart. As dawn broke over the city, Bill gathered his family and Jim in the study. The atmosphere was tense, filled with a mixture of determination and apprehension. "Today's the day," Bill announced, his voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. "We're going to the FBI with everything we've uncovered." Megan squeezed Lucas's hand, her face a mask of resolve. "Are we sure about this, Bill? Once we take this step, there's no going back." Bill nodded solemnly. We've come too far to turn back now. It's time to end this once and for all. As they prepared to leave, Lucas spoke up, his young face set with determination beyond his years. Would I want to come too? I need to see this through. Bill and Megan exchanged glances, silently debating the wisdom of bringing Lucas into what could be a dangerous situation. Finally, Bill knelt down to meet his grandson's eyes. "All right, Lucas," he said softly, "but you stay close to us, and if things get dicey, you do exactly as we say. Understood?" Lucas nodded, his jaw set with resolve. "Understood, Grandpa." The drive to the FBL office was tense, the car filled with an electric anticipation. Jim sat in the front, constantly checking the rearview mirror for any signs of pursuit. As they pulled into the parking lot, Bill noticed a sleek black car parked across the street, its windows tinted. "Jim," he murmured, nodding towards the vehicle. The detective's eyes narrowed. "I see it. Stay alert, everyone." As they entered the building, Bill couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into the lion's den. They were escorted to a conference room where two stern-faced agents were waiting. Mr. Carter, the lead agent, a woman with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor, greeted them. "I'm Agent Samantha Hayes. We've been expecting you." For the next several hours, Bill, Megan, and Jim laid out their case, presenting document after document, testimony after testimony. They detailed the web of corruption, the money laundering, the attempted murder of Michael and his family, and the subsequent cover-up. As they spoke, Agent Hayes' expression grew increasingly grave. When they finished, she leaned back in her chair, her eyes intense. "Mr. Carter," she said slowly, "what you've brought us, this is bigger than you know. We've been investigating this organization for years, but we've never had enough concrete evidence to move against them. Until now." A spark of hope ignited in Bill's chest. "So you'll act on this information?" Agent Hayes nodded, her expression determined. "We'll need to move quickly. If they get wind of this, they'll try to cover their tracks or worse." As if on cue, a commotion erupted outside the conference room. Shouts and the sound of running feet echoed through the hallway. Agent Hayes was on her feet in an instant, her hand moving to her weapon. "Get down," she shouted, just as the door burst open. A group of men in suits stormed in, their faces set in grim determination. Bill's heart sank as he recognized one of them, Jonathan Blackwell, a powerful businessman with deep connections in both the corporate and political worlds. "This stops now, Carter," Blackwell snarled, his eyes cold with fury. "You have no idea what you're meddling with." Agent Hayes stepped forward, her weapon drawn. "Jonathan Blackwell, you're under arrest for." But before she could finish, chaos erupted. Blackwell's men surged forward, and the room exploded into a flurry of motion. Bill grabbed Lucas, shielding him with his body as they ducked behind a desk. The next few minutes were a blur of shouting, gunshots, and breaking glass. Bill's world narrowed to protecting his grandson, his ears ringing from the deafening noise. He could hear Megan's voice, calling out for Lucas, and Jim's gruff shouts as he grappled with one of Blackwell's men. Suddenly, a hand grabbed Bill's shoulder. He whirled, ready to fight, only to find Agent Hayes crouched beside him. "Do we need to move?" she said urgently. "There's a safe room down the hall." "Go." Bill scooped up Lucas, and with Megan at his side, they made a dash for the door. Jim covered their retreat, his face set in grim determination as he exchanged fire with Blackwell's men. They raced down the hallway, the sounds of the fight echoing behind them. Agent Hayes led them to a heavy steel door, quickly punching in a code. As the door swung open, Bill heard a cry of pain. He turned to see Jim stumble, clutching his arm. "Jim!" Bill shouted, ready to go back for his friend. But Jim waved him off. "Go, I'll hold them off. Get Lucas to safety." With a heavy heart, Bill ushered his family into the safe room. The door closed with a resounding thud, sealing them in silence. Lucas clung to Megan, his eyes wide with fear. "What's going to happen now?" he whispered. Bill pulled his family close, his mind racing. "We're going to be okay," he said, trying to inject confidence into his voice. "We've come too far to give up now." For what felt like hours, they huddled in the safe room, listening to the muffled sounds of conflict outside. Bill's thoughts were a whirlwind of worry, for Jim, for the agents fighting on their behalf, for the future that now seemed so uncertain. Finally, the door opened, revealing Agent Hayes. Her suit was disheveled, and there was a cut above her eye, but her expression was triumphant. "It's over," she announced. "We've got Blackwell and his men in custody. Your friend Jim is injured but stable. He's on his way to the hospital." As they emerged from the safe room, Bill was struck by the scene of destruction in the hallway. Broken glass littered the floor, and there were bullet holes in the walls. But amidst the chaos, there was a sense of finality, of a long-fought battle finally won. In the days that followed, the full extent of the organization's crimes came to light. Arrests were made across the country, reaching into the highest levels of corporate and political power. Bill watched the news reports with a mixture of relief and disbelief, still struggling to comprehend the scope of what they had uncovered. As the dust began to settle, Bill, Megan, and Lucas found themselves adjusting to a new reality. The constant fear that had shadowed them for so long began to lift, replaced by a cautious optimism for the future. So one evening, as they sat together in the mansion's living room, Lucas turned to his mother and grandfather, his young face serious. "Is it really over?" he asked. "Are we safe now?" Megan pulled her son close, pressing a kiss to his forehead. "Yes, sweetheart, it's over. We're safe." Bill nodded, his eyes misty with emotion. "And we're together. That's what matters most." As they sat there, surrounded by the warmth of family and the promise of a new beginning, Bill felt a profound sense of gratitude. They had faced unimaginable challenges, weathered storms that would have broken lesser spirits. But through it all, they had persevered, bound by the unbreakable ties of love and family. The road ahead was still uncertain, with much healing and rebuilding to be done. But as Bill looked at his daughter-in-law and grandson, he knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. They were the Carters, survivors, fighters, and now finally victors. The nightmare that had begun on that fateful night 5 years ago was finally over. Justice had been served, the truth had been revealed, and a family once torn apart had found its way back together. As the sun set on this chapter of their lives, Bill Carter looked to the future with hope, ready to embrace the second chance they had all been given. In the aftermath of their harrowing confrontation with Blackwell and his criminal organization, the Carter family found themselves navigating a new and unexpected challenge. As the dust settled and the immediate danger passed, the toll of their ordeal began to manifest in ways they hadn't anticipated. Megan, who had been a pillar of strength throughout their struggles, suddenly found herself grappling with a devastating diagnosis. During a routine checkup, meant to ensure she hadn't sustained any injuries during the FBI office incident, doctors discovered something far more sinister: stage 3 lung cancer. The news hit the family like a thunderbolt, shaking the very foundation of the peace they had just begun to build. Bill, who had only recently reunited with his daughter-in-law, felt a fresh wave of anguish wash over him. Lucas, still processing the trauma of the past years, now faced the prospect of losing his mother all over again. Megan, ever the fighter, met the diagnosis with a mix of determination and fear. "We've come too far to give up now," she said, her voice trembling but resolute as she shared the news with Bill and Lucas. "I'm going to fight this with everything I have." The following weeks were a blur of hospital visits, consultations with oncologists, and difficult conversations. Lucas, in particular, struggled to cope with this new threat to his family's happiness. One evening, Bill found him in the mansion's library, furiously leafing through medical textbooks. "Lucas," Bill called softly, approaching his grandson. "What are you doing?" Lucas looked up, his eyes red-rimmed from lack of sleep and unshed tears. "I'm trying to find a cure, Grandpa," he said, his voice cracking. "There has to be something we missed, some treatment the doctors haven't thought of." Bill's heart broke at the desperation in Lucas's voice. He sat down beside the boy, gently closing the book in front of him. "Oh, Lucas," he sighed, pulling his grandson into a tight embrace. "I know how scared you are. We all are, but your mom has the best doctors working on her case. What she needs most right now is our love and support." As Megan began her treatment, the Carter household rallied around her. Bill took charge of managing her medical appointments and ensuring she had everything she needed for her comfort. Lucas, determined to be useful, threw himself into researching nutrition and preparing healthy meals for his mother. Despite their best efforts, the treatment took a heavy toll on Megan, the vibrant, energetic woman who had faced down dangerous criminals now struggled with the simple act of climbing the stairs. Her hair, once a point of pride, began to fall out in clumps, a visible reminder of the battle raging within her body. One particularly difficult day, after a grueling round of chemotherapy, Bill found Megan sitting in front of her vanity, staring at her reflection with tears streaming down her face. In her hand, she clutched a large clump of hair that had come out when she tried to brush it. "I don't know if I can do this, Bill," she whispered, her voice raw with emotion. "I'm so tired of fighting." Bill knelt beside her, taking her free hand in his. "Megan, look at me," he said gently. When she met his gaze, he continued, "You are the strongest person I know. You survived years on the run, protected Lucas against impossible odds, and helped bring down a criminal empire. This is just another battle, and I know you have it in you to win." Megan managed a weak smile, squeezing Bill's hand. "Thank you," she murmured. "I don't know what I'd do without you and Lucas." As Megan's condition worsened, Lucas found himself grappling with memories of the accident that had separated him from his parents years ago. The fear of losing his mother again triggered nightmares and anxiety attacks, leaving the young boy exhausted and emotionally drained. One night, Bill was awakened by the sound of muffled sobs coming from Lucas's room. He found his grandson curled up in bed, clutching an old family photo to his chest. "I had a dream about the accident," Lucas confessed when Bill sat on the edge of his bed. "But this time it wasn't just Dad who died. Mom was gone too, and I was all alone again." Bill gathered Lucas into his arms, feeling the boy's tears soak through his nightshirt. "It was just a dream, Lucas," he soothed, running a hand through his grandson's hair. "Your mom is still here and she's fighting hard, and no matter what happens, you will never be alone again. I promise you that." As the weeks turned into months, Megan's struggle against cancer became a roller coaster of hope and despair. There were days when her strength seemed to return, when her laughter echoed through the mansion, and it was easy to believe she would beat the odds. But there were also dark days filled with pain and exhaustion, when the future looked bleak and uncertain. Through it all, the Carter family clung to each other, their bond strengthened by the trials they faced together. Bill found himself taking on the role of both grandfather and father to Lucas, helping the boy navigate his fears and anxieties while trying to maintain a sense of normalcy in their lives. Lucas, for his part, showed a maturity beyond his years. He spent hours by his mother's bedside, reading to her when she was too tired to talk, or simply holding her hand in silent support. His presence became a source of comfort and motivation for Megan, giving her strength when her own faltered. As Megan's battle with cancer continued, the Carters were reminded once again of the fragility of life and the preciousness of family. The future remained uncertain, but they faced it together, their love and determination a beacon of hope in the darkness. The road ahead would be challenging, but they had already overcome so much. Whatever came next, they would face it as they had everything else, united, resilient, and unwavering in their support for one another. As the Carter family grappled with Megan's illness and the emotional aftermath of their ordeal, a startling revelation shook their world once again. It came in the form of a letter, delivered to the mansion on a crisp autumn morning. Bill was in his study, reviewing some documents related to Carter Enterprises, when his housekeeper brought in the mail. Among the usual correspondence was a plain white envelope, addressed simply to the Carter family. There was no return address. With a sense of trepidation, Bill opened the envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper, and as he read its contents, his hands began to shake. "My dearest family," the letter began. "If you're reading this, it means I've finally found the courage to reach out. My name is Emma Carter, and I am Lucas's twin sister." Bill felt the room spin. A twin sister? How was this possible? He continued reading, his mind reeling with each new revelation. Emma explained that she and Lucas had been separated at birth. Megan and Michael, fearing for their children's safety due to Michael's dangerous discoveries, had made the heart-wrenching decision to hide one of the twins. Emma had been sent to live with Megan's distant cousin in Europe. Her existence kept a secret to protect both children. "I've been watching from afar," Emma wrote, "learning about the struggles you've all endured. I want you to know that I never stopped thinking about my family, about the brother I never knew. Now that the danger has passed, I hope we can finally meet." Bill sat in stunned silence, the letter clutched in his trembling hands. How could he tell Megan and Lucas about this? How would they react to knowing their family was even larger than they had imagined? With a heavy heart, Bill made his way to Megan's room. She was resting after her latest round of treatment, with Lucas reading quietly by her bedside. They both looked up as Bill entered, immediately sensing something was amiss. "What is it, Bill?" Megan asked, her voice weak but concerned. Bill took a deep breath. "There's something I need to tell you both. Something unexpected." As gently as he could, Bill explained the contents of the letter. He watched as shock, disbelief, and a myriad of other emotions played across Megan and Lucas's faces. Megan's hand flew to her mouth, tears welling in her eyes. "Emma," she whispered, the name foreign yet familiar on her lips. I never dared hope she'd find us." Lucas sat in stunned silence, trying to process the idea that he had a twin sister. "Why didn't you tell me?" he finally asked, his voice small and hurt. Megan reached for her son's hand. "Oh, Lucas, we wanted to protect you both. The less you knew, the safer you were. It was the hardest decision your father and I ever made." As the initial shock wore off, a new set of questions and concerns arose. Should they reach out to Emma? Was it safe to bring her into their lives now? And how would this news affect their already fragile family dynamic? After much discussion, they decided to respond to Emma's letter, inviting her to visit the mansion. The days leading up to her arrival were filled with nervous anticipation. Lucas, in particular, seemed to vacillate between excitement and anxiety. The day Emma was set to arrive, the Carter mansion was a flurry of activity. Bill paced nervously in the foyer, while Lucas sat on the stairs, fidgeting with the hem of his shirt. Megan, feeling stronger that day, insisted on being downstairs to greet her long-lost daughter. When the doorbell finally rang, time seemed to stand still. Bill opened the door to reveal a young girl who could have been Lucas's mirror image. Emma stood there, her blue eyes, so like her brother's, wide with a mix of hope and fear. "Hello," she said softly, her voice trembling slightly. "I'm Emma." For a moment, no one moved. Then, as if a spell had been broken, Megan let out a sob and rushed forward, enveloping Emma in a tight embrace. Lucas approached more cautiously, studying the sister he never knew he had. As Emma was welcomed into the house, the atmosphere was a strange mix of joy and awkwardness. There was so much to say, so many years to catch up on, that no one quite knew where to begin. Over the next few days, Emma slowly integrated into the Carter household. She and Lucas formed a tentative bond, marveling at their similarities and discovering their differences. Megan spent every moment she could with her daughter, making up for lost time even as her illness reminded them all of the precious nature of their reunion. One evening, as Bill watched Emma and Lucas laughing together over a board game, he felt a bittersweet ache in his chest. The family picture was now complete, yet the shadow of Megan's illness hung over their newfound happiness. Emma's presence brought a renewed energy to the household. She was a breath of fresh air, untouched by the traumas that had shaped the rest of the family. Her optimism and zest for life seemed to infect everyone around her, even Megan, who found new strength in her daughter's presence. But Emma's arrival also brought complications. Lucas, while happy to have a sister, sometimes struggled with feelings of jealousy and insecurity. And he had just gotten his mother back, and now he had to share her attention with a sibling he was still getting to know. Bill found himself in the role of mediator, helping Lucas navigate his complex emotions, while also making Emma feel welcome and loved. It was a delicate balance, but one that Bill was determined to maintain for the sake of his newly expanded family. As the days passed, Emma's presence seemed to have an almost miraculous effect on Megan. Whether it was the joy of being reunited with her daughter or simply the infusion of youthful energy, Megan's condition began to show signs of improvement. Her doctors were cautiously optimistic, speaking of the power of positive emotions in fighting disease. And the family dared to hope, to dream of a future where they could all be together, healthy and whole. Emma's unexpected arrival had brought with it a sense of completion, as if the final piece of a long unsolved puzzle had finally fallen into place. Yet, even as they celebrated this new chapter in their lives, the Carters remained acutely aware of the fragility of their happiness. They had learned the hard way that life could change in an instant, that joy could turn to sorrow in the blink of an eye. But for now they chose to focus on the present, on the miracle of their reunion, and on the love that bound them together. Emma's arrival had not erased the challenges they faced, but it had given them a new source of strength, a reminder of the resilience of family bonds. As Bill watched his grandchildren, no longer one but two, he felt a sense of wonder at the twists and turns life had taken. The road ahead was still uncertain, but with Emma's arrival, it seemed a little brighter, a little more full of promise. The Carter family had been through so much: loss, separation, betrayal, and illness. But they had also experienced love, reunion, and now an unexpected gift in the form of Emma. Whatever the future held, they would face it together, their family circle now complete in ways they had never imagined possible. The Carter mansion, once a symbol of loss and solitude, now buzzed with renewed life and purpose. The arrival of Emma, the unexpected twin sister, had brought a fresh dynamic to the family, infusing their days with a mixture of joy and challenges. As weeks turned into months, the Carters found themselves navigating a new normal, one that balanced hope with the lingering shadows of their past. Megan's battle with cancer continued, but with a vigor that surprised even her doctors. Whether it was the emotional boost from Emma's arrival or simply her indomitable spirit, she showed remarkable improvement. There were still difficult days filled with pain and exhaustion, but they were increasingly outnumbered by moments of strength and optimism. One sunny afternoon, as the family gathered in the garden, Megan's oncologist called with news that left them all stunned. Her latest scans showed a significant reduction in tumor size. The treatment was working better than anyone had dared to hope. "It's not over yet," Megan cautioned, her eyes bright with unshed tears of joy. "But for the first time, I feel like I might actually beat this." The news galvanized the family. Lucas and Emma, who had been growing closer despite occasional bouts of sibling rivalry, threw themselves into researching alternative therapies and nutrition plans to support their mother's recovery. Bill, for his part, used his considerable resources to ensure Megan had access to the best medical care available. As Megan's health improved, Bill turned his attention to the future of Carter Enterprises. The scandal that had rocked the company had left deep scars, but also presented an opportunity for renewal. With the corrupt elements rooted out, Bill saw a chance to reshape the company into something that truly reflected his values. "We have a responsibility," he told his grandchildren one evening as they sat in his study. "Not just to make money, but to make a difference. I want Carter Enterprises to be a force for good in the world." Lucas and Emma listened intently as their grandfather outlined his vision for the company's future. He spoke of sustainable business practices, ethical investments, and using their resources to support causes that mattered. It was a far cry from the cutthroat world of business that had indirectly led to their family's tragedy years ago. "I want you both to be a part of this," Bill said, his eyes twinkling with excitement. "You're the future of this family and of this company. What do you say?" The twins exchanged glances, a silent communication passing between them. It was Lucas who spoke first, his voice filled with determination. "I'm in, Grandpa, but I have an idea of my own to add." Lucas went on to explain his vision for a foundation dedicated to helping children who had been separated from their families due to circumstances beyond their control. It would provide support, resources, and most importantly, hope to those who felt lost and alone, just as he had for so many years. Emma, her eyes shining with pride for her brother, chimed in. "And I want to focus on medical research, especially in pediatric cancers. No child should have to go through what Mom is experiencing, and no family should have to face that fear." Bill felt a swell of emotion as he listened to his grandchildren. They had been through so much, yet here they were, looking to the future with hope and a desire to help others. It was more than he could have ever hoped for. As the Carters worked to rebuild their lives and reshape their family's legacy, they faced their share of challenges. The media tension surrounding their story had died down, but occasionally a reporter would come sniffing around, looking for a follow-up to the sensational tale of long-lost twins and corporate corruption. Lucas and Emma, still adjusting to their newfound sibling relationship, had their moments of tension. They were so alike in many ways, yet their different upbringings had shaped them into distinct individuals. Learning to navigate these differences while celebrating their bond became an ongoing process. Megan, though improving, still had difficult days. The fear of relapse loomed in the background, a constant reminder of the fragility of their happiness. But she faced each day with a courage that inspired everyone around her, determined to make the most of the second chance she had been given with her family. Bill, watching his family heal and grow, felt a profound sense of gratitude. The pain of the past would always be a part of them, but it no longer defined them. Instead, it had forged them into something stronger, more resilient. As the first anniversary of Emma's arrival approached, the Carters decided to celebrate with a small gathering at the mansion. It was a far cry from the lavish parties Bill had once thrown, but it was filled with something far more valuable: genuine love and joy. Friends who had stood by them through their darkest times were there, including Jim Owens, the detective who had played such a crucial role in uncovering the truth. Even Agent Hayes from the FBI made an appearance, her usually stern face softened by a smile as she watched the family she had helped reunite. As the evening wore on, Bill found a quiet moment to slip away to his study. He stood by the window, looking out at the garden where his grandchildren were laughing with their friends. Megan sat nearby, her face glowing with health and happiness as she chatted with Emma. A soft knock at the door interrupted his reverie. It was Lucas, his young face serious. "Grandpa," he said, stepping into the room, "I wanted to thank you for everything, for not giving up on me, for bringing our family back together." Bill felt a lump form in his throat. He pulled Lucas into a tight embrace, marveling at how much the boy had grown, not just physically but emotionally. "Oh, Lucas," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "you don't need to thank me. You, your sister, your mother, you've given me more than I could have ever dreamed of. You've given me a second chance at family." As they rejoined the party, Bill looked around at the faces of his loved ones. The road had been long and fraught with danger, but they had made it. They had faced unimaginable odds, weathered storms that would have broken lesser spirits and come out stronger on the other side. The future was bright with promise. Carter Enterprises was poised to become a leader in ethical business practices. The foundations Lucas and Emma had envisioned were taking shape, ready to make a real difference in the world. And most importantly, their family was whole, bound together by love and the unbreakable spirit that had seen them through their darkest hours. As the evening drew to a close, Bill raised a toast. "To family," he said, his voice carrying across the room. to second chances, to love that transcends time and distance, and to the bright future we'll build together. The Carters had been tested by fire, but they had emerged not just survivors but victors. Their story, once marked by tragedy and loss, had become a testament to the power of love, the strength of family, and the indomitable human spirit. And as they stood together, united at last, they knew that whatever challenges the future might hold, they would face them as they had everything else, together with courage, hope, and unwavering love. As the evening drew to a close, Bill Carter stood before his reunited family, his eyes glistening with tears of joy and pride. He raised his glass, his voice trembling slightly with emotion. "You know, there was a time when I thought I'd lost everything, when the darkness seemed too deep to ever find my way out. But standing here now, looking at all of you, I realize that even in our darkest moments, hope never truly abandons us." He paused, his gaze sweeping over Megan, Lucas, and Emma. "Megan, my dear, when you said we've come too far to give up now, during your cancer battle, you taught us all about the power of perseverance. Lucas, my boy, your determination to find a cure showed us that love knows no bounds. And Emma, your arrival reminded us that miracles can happen when we least expect them." Bill's voice cracked slightly as he continued. "We've all been through hell and back. We've faced loss, separation, and betrayal. But we've also discovered the incredible strength that lies within each of us. Remember what I told you, Lucas. Whatever we discover, we'll face it together. That promise holds truer now than ever before." Tears were flowing freely now, not just from Bill, but from everyone in the room. Family isn't just about blood. It's about the bonds we forge through adversity, the love that sustains us when all seems lost. It's about second chances and the courage to embrace them. He raised his glass higher, his voice growing stronger. "So here's to us, the Carter family, to the battles we've fought, the tears we've shed, and the joy we've found. To the future we'll build together, brighter and stronger than ever before. Because as Lucas so wisely said, we're going to be okay. More than okay, we're going to be extraordinary." As Bill's words hung in the air, there wasn't a dry eye in the room. His message resonated deeply, reminding everyone present of the power of love, the strength of family, and the resilience of the human spirit. It was a testament to the journey they had all taken, from the depths of despair to the heights of joy, and a promise of the beautiful future that lay ahead, built on the unshakable foundation of their shared experiences and unwavering love for one another. As our story of the Carter family comes to a close, let's remember Bill's powerful words: family isn't just about blood. It's about the bonds we forge through adversity, the love that sustains us when all seems lost. This tale of resilience and hope reminds us that even in our darkest moments, there's always a light at the end of the tunnel. Now, dear viewers, if this story has touched your heart, we'd love to hear from you. As Lucas said, we're going to be okay, and we hope this story has made you feel that way too. If you enjoyed this journey with the Carters, please leave a comment with the number 1. And remember Megan's fighting spirit when she said, "We've come too far to give up now." If you're eager to see where the Carter family story goes next, comment with the number 2, and we'll know you're ready for part 2. If there's anything in the story you didn't quite agree with or would like to discuss further, please share your thoughts in the comments. As Bill told his grandchildren, we have a responsibility not just to make money, but to make a difference. Your feedback helps us create content that truly resonates with you. Lastly, if you want to support our team in bringing more heartwarming stories like this to life, please hit that subscribe button. As Emma and Lucas showed us, sometimes the most unexpected arrivals can bring the greatest joy. Who knows what other amazing tales await in our upcoming videos? Thank you for joining us on this emotional journey. As Bill said, to second chances, to love that transcends time and distance, and to the bright future we'll build together. We hope to see you in our next video, where we'll continue to explore the extraordinary power of love, family, and the human spirit.